We're back for another interview behind the scenes at Pacific Bitcoin Festival. I'm here with the one and only Steven Lubka, head of Swan Private. Super excited for this one, not only because he's making me look very small and I need to work on my posture, but because I have really taken your advice of sun maxing and 10K steps seriously. So, I know you don't even talk about Bitcoin anymore on Twitter, but hey, what's your thoughts on Bitcoin right now, and how is Pacific Bitcoin Festival treating you?
What's Bitcoin?
What is Bitcoin?
No.
Why are we here?
I'm here to talk about sunlight and steps, man. No. What are my thoughts? So awesome to be here. Great to be here with you. Love Pacific Bitcoin. It's so cool to see all of these amazing Bitcoiners in one place. It's like, I don't know, this is like Christmas for me. You can't walk 10 feet without meeting someone from Twitter, having a great conversation, seeing some really cool stuff. So thrilled to be here. I'm bullish on Bitcoin, man. I mean, we've been through a long bear market, and it kind of just seems inevitable at this point between, where the ETF is at, coming into, some sell pressure reduction via the halving, kind of having gone through this long unwind. I think Bitcoin looks really good. Swan's just announced our new Vault product, our new multi-sig. We've been growing. It's just a great time. It's a great time to be in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think we've all been having these same conversations that it's been a rough bear market, I think, for everyone. It's the I am building meme right now, and everyone's just trying to make it through the bear market. And so you are, as we said, head of Swan Private. So what do you think are the challenges of Bitcoin adoption in the traditional financial ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think we're still at a phase, we're still at a place where Bitcoiners need to communicate why Bitcoin matters to non-Bitcoiners. And I think one of the natural challenges we've found ourselves in is we've created a ton of elegant messaging, arguments, essays, podcasts, but generally they're written by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Yep. And I just really believe we're at a point where we need to get outside of that, and we need to be producing content by Bitcoiners for non-Bitcoiners. And so, you mentioned at the start of this, it's one of the reasons I post a lot about health. I mean, I do it because I love it. But one of the benefits of doing that I've seen is it puts me in front of a new audience. It puts me in front of other people that are interested in health or interested in this or that. And then I get to talk about Bitcoin to those people. And I think that's what everyone should be doing. We all have multiple interests. None of us only care about Bitcoin in this world. It's a big world. There's plenty of other things. And whatever your other interests are, lean into those, talk to people about those. You'll meet other people and you'll get to explain why you care about Bitcoin. And I think if all Bitcoiners did this, adoption would go faster.
Love it. Yeah, I'm very big on the same idea of you're a walking billboard for Bitcoin, and live your life in such a way that other people are inspired and they look at you like, how come this guy's so hopeful when the world's crumbling around them? It's like, Steven Lubka, I get my 10K steps in, I get my sun in, I ground while I'm walking. And it's just, I really do believe that this is also the best way to spread Bitcoin, is living a good life. And then people wondering how is he living this good life? How is he so optimistic in the face of all the pessimism that I'm seeing in the world? And I really do believe in the idea, you're a walking billboard for Bitcoin. Not only talk about Bitcoin, but get yourself in the best position mentally, physically, spiritually 100%. As possible. And more people will resonate to, oh, is Bitcoin part of this journey for you? Is this why you're so happy? But on that point of talking Bitcoin to the average person, yeah. Do you think that this involves, using less Bitcoin tinge vernacular, maybe not just diving into the deep end with people, yes. And using just Bitcoin words that only Bitcoiners know, and only using Bitcoin memes? Is this just trying to break down the Bitcoin high level signal to the layman in everyday conversation?
It 100% is. I think that's essential. And the thing I've learned, I run Swan Private. I've orange pilled literally thousands of people via one-on-one conversations over the course of basically 3 years. I'm very fortunate to be in that position, fortunate to get to talk to all these people. And the thing I've learned is that Bitcoin means something different to everybody. It is not the same thing. The thing that clicked for you about Bitcoin, the thing that has Bitcoin close to your heart, close to your thoughts, close to your attention, the reason you keep coming back to Bitcoin will not be the same reason that everyone else comes to Bitcoin. And it's why I think we've seen ideological diversity really expand in the Bitcoin space. We now have, it definitely started as, maybe predominantly a libertarian thing, but now you have progressives, you have PhDs, you have academics, you have, corporate executives, you have all sorts of people that, are interested in Bitcoin now. And I guarantee you those people are interested in it for different reasons. And that's a strength. It's a strength that Bitcoin has all of this depth to it. But that's the thing you have to keep in mind when trying to orange pill somebody or trying to talk to somebody about Bitcoin. Present Bitcoin in the way you think will resonate with them, not the way that resonated for you. Maybe those are sometimes the same, but you need to discern that first.
Yeah, I say it all the time. I stole it from How to Win Friends and Influences, and it's bait the hook for the fish you're trying to catch. And it's always like ask them what they think the worst problem in the world is, and then explain to them that Bitcoin fixes this, and this is how you get there. Anyways, you said you work head of Swan Private, so maybe what are some insights that you are seeing from some of these high net worth individuals on the back end that we aren't really privy to the conversations on Twitter?
Yeah. So they're more educated about Bitcoin now. Years ago, they didn't know as much. And this was in the bull market, and maybe that changes again in the next bull market. But they're more educated. They know Bitcoin on a deeper level. They're more concerned with just the process of how do I buy Bitcoin? How do I store Bitcoin rather than what is Bitcoin or why should Bitcoin have value? So education has increased. A lot of entrepreneurs at this stage. So in the high net worth segment, the sorts of people who are buying Bitcoin generally, all sorts. I mean, there's a huge variety, but I think the largest chunk is founders and entrepreneurs of all sorts of company. That doesn't mean just like a tech startup or something. Some of these, they own a contracting firm. They do roofing. They do batteries. They do software. They own a law firm, whatever. But entrepreneurs, people who have taken risks, who think for themselves, who navigate questions for themselves. And those have been the predominant, I think the biggest bucket there at this stage. And, something I've observed is Bitcoiners at this stage Bitcoiners are weird. And I say that in a positive way, but Bitcoiners are weird. And this is true for high net worth clients as much as it's true for all of us maniacs on Bitcoin Twitter. But they're unusual. They're outside of the box. They have divergent interests. I think that's awesome. I identify a lot with that. But
yeah, we're weirdos.
Yeah, we're weirdos. But that's still where everyone, and that doesn't change when you get to the wealth segment. It's some weird rich people. I say that with a lot of love. My clients are listening. I respect you very deeply, and I'm a weirdo.
Good. Weird is good. Keep it weird. Keep it weird. But so you were talking about Swan Vault, right?
Yeah.
So what is Swan Vault, and what do you think the future of custody is in the Bitcoin space?
Yeah. Ooh, great question. So Swan Vault is Swan's new multi-sig offering. It's a collaborative custody. So Swan holds one key and the user holds two keys. There's some really cool parts to it. One part is that at any point, you can basically rip it out and plug it into Spectre Desktop and just be fully self-sovereign. Just sign it yourself, create your own wallets, don't have to interact with the Swan user interface at all. But you have the added benefit of when you're using the Swan account and the Swan Vault, it is a seamless, smooth, almost, that's a high bar. We're not quite at Apple's level, but it's an Apple-like experience. It's easy. It makes sense. And that was one of our big goals, to simplify it. But with that added part that if something happens or you're concerned, you can always just run that yourself in a local implementation of Spectre Desktop. So really cool marriage of both worlds. There's some other great features too. We'll be talking a lot about it. But what do I think the future of custody is? I think the future of custody takes many forms. I don't think there's one size fits all custody that just wins and everybody does this one thing and nobody does any other things. There's obviously single sig hardware wallets. There's multi-sig implementations. I'm bullish that multi-sig gets a lot bigger, especially with stuff like Miniscript and decaying multi-sig signatures where you get some really great programmability and flexibility. So I think that gets larger than it is today. But is all Bitcoin going to be held in self-custody, 100% of people? Not anytime in the near future. And so there's also a role for high-quality custodians, for retirement funds, for trust companies, for businesses with many operators and stakeholders. So we need to make progress on all of these custody fronts. We need to make self-custody, single sig easier. We need to make multi-sig much more robust and able to do more with it. And we need good custodians at the very least for the kind of institutional segments who have regulatory restrictions on how they hold assets.
Yeah, I was here with Preston Pish, Sam Callahan, and Alpha earlier, and they were mentioning the idea of multi-institutional custody, and kind of Preston Pish was jumping on the idea of the concern that all the Bitcoin ETFs are basically using Coinbase as of now on paper as their custodian. So do you think that that's a concern? Like, are you concerned with the paper Bitcoin ETF idea, or do you think that this is just the inevitable step of Bitcoin maturing as a financial vehicle?
I am literally more concerned with the existing futures ETF than I am the spot ETF.
Okay.
Like I'm less concerned with the spot ETF selling paper Bitcoin than I am derivatives products literally allowing people to buy paper Bitcoin. Like that's what we have currently is you're buying derivatives contracts. They are paper. There is no it's not Bitcoin. So honestly, I think like the existing structure is the concerning one. You know, is BlackRock gonna break the law and do a bunch of illegal shit and rehypothecate stuff? Like, I don't know, maybe, but they've got $1 trillion business to mess up. It's theirs to lose. Like, be pretty dumb. Not saying nobody's ever manipulated the gold market or those sort of things, but I'm not so concerned with that. That doesn't mean I'm not concerned at all with the ETF, though. I'm just not so much concerned about it from a paper Bitcoin perspective. I think that there's kind of this race going on where if we don't produce good either multi-sig or multi-institutional multi-sig that is so good that ETF issuers can use it, or if we can't get there in the meaningful amount of time, just custodians that are so good the ETF issuers will use it. Or sorry, not the ETF issuers, but like individuals who would buy an ETF feel comfortable enough doing that instead of buying the ETF. I think we're in this race where the ETF will be really easy to get and really easy to have exposure to. It'll be simple and people will put money into it, and RIAs will put money into it, and retirement funds and people's IRAs will put money into it. At a certain point, that becomes vaguely problematic. At a certain point, if the BlackRock spot ETF owns X% of all outstanding Bitcoin, there's some value for X that isn't good, right? There's just, if there's a fork, they have too much influence, etc. And so the way we circumvent that, I think in the short term, the ETF is bullish. It's certainly bullish for price. I think it's good overall. But if we let that get out of control because we aren't able to create a competing alternative that is attractive for people rather than buying the ETF shares, they're going to get a lot of assets under there, and that's not great.
Yeah, 100%. Well, on that note, we have the meme in Bitcoin of Bitcoin changes you, you don't change Bitcoin. And we were saying for a while, and I know, again, back to the paper concern of a Bitcoin spot ETF and BlackRock getting interested in Bitcoin. And we kind of jokingly said that, there's a lot of concern about BlackRock taking down Bitcoin, but maybe it's Bitcoin that takes down BlackRock eventually. Do you think this will be one of those scenarios where BlackRock's business strategy will have to conform to how Bitcoin works? Is Bitcoin decentralized and powerful enough to withstand the interest of a BlackRock?
I think it is. I think Bitcoin absolutely is, but that is not a static proclamation, right? That's not like Steven or anybody else doesn't say that today, and so it's just true always. That could become more true or less true, and it's up to us to determine the course of that. So do I think Bitcoin right now can resist what we're looking at in the next 6 months and the launch of this ETF? Absolutely. but it's up to us to ensure that continues to stay true. And the thing is like if BlackRock issues a Bitcoin ETF and Bitcoin goes up enormously in price, well, that's more money for BlackRock. It becomes more of their attention on it. And there's this it's like kind of like an arms race. And it's kind of something that it's part of the beauty of Bitcoin is there is this arms race that's embedded into it of this constant competition. And I think the more big players get on the scene, it just speeds up the velocity and the power behind that arms race. And, it's the institutional interest can help us if we handle it right, and it can hurt us if we don't. But it's up to us ultimately, regardless of how much Bitcoin these issuers acquire under these ETF structures. We are the ones who are shepherding the protocol, and we need to not fuck up.
Yeah, 100. And by we, you mean Bitcoin holders?
I mean, yeah, Bitcoin holders, Bitcoin devs, community members. I mean, anybody who participates in this movement in any capacity, right? Like you are in some way influencing the way other people think. If you've ever had a conversation with anyone about Bitcoin, you have to some greater or lesser degree influenced the way at least one other person has thought about Bitcoin. And if we think about what Bitcoin is, well, it's social consensus. What's social consensus made up of? It's made up of what people think. And so if you're influencing thinking, perceptions, values, answering the question, even just answering the question, what is Bitcoin? Two people can think of that question very differently. And if most people just think of Bitcoin as like get rich quick scheme, then yeah, it's good. The social layer is going to be ill prepared to resist like number go up attack where like, the price pumps, but it's because we've compromised the core values, right? Whereas instead, if we do a good job and we find a way to instill the value of a truly censorship resistant, truly decentralized money into people, and the reason they care about Bitcoin, sure, everyone wants to make money, but I think it's good. It is a good thing for the world. It is a virtuous thing. It is a moral thing for the world to have at least one form of money which is easy to access and is free from oversight and debasement by governments. And if that can be a principal value that we get most people to resonate with, and that's something to say, hey, maybe that doesn't make sense to you as an American. Maybe that doesn't make sense to you as somebody who's led a great life, led a blessed life. But what if you were born in emerging markets? What if you were born in a corrupt authoritarian regime? Would you value having at least the option to put your wealth in something that isn't under their direct purview and control? And if you can make that hit home, if you can make that feel emotionally alive for someone, then maybe they can have, not that I'm here to say what the right value is for Bitcoin, but if that isn't our value, we're doing something wrong.
I love it. I constantly say the same thing, just less eloquent than you, Steven. But on that point, so I think it'd be safe to say that you don't think Bitcoin is inevitable.
In a sense that we get to all throw up our hands and not do anything. No, I don't. I don't think that's what happens. And so like, that's not like, I don't think we're looking at a scenario where everyone just like throws up their hands and thinks that this thing just like is fully independent from us. But no, I don't think it's inevitable. And I think it's a risky mindset to have because nothing in this world is inevitable. There are things that are much more likely than others. There are things which are extremely unlikely to fail in some sort of totalizing way. Do I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that Bitcoin would like go to zero or like the network would cease to function? Like, yeah, I do. I think that's extremely unlikely. But is it inevitable that it fully actualizes all of its potential and all of its promise? No, because money exists in the human arena. Like money exists. It has objective qualities, but it exists in a social context. It exists in people. What is economics? Like it's it's human minds. Like, what is value? It's the content of human minds. And I mean this very literally. This isn't like a metaphor. It's the price that this clementine has. It's subjective value. It's like, I'm full right now. I wouldn't pay you for this. If I was starving, I might give you quite a lot of sats for this, right? It's in here, it's not out here. And that's a component of money. That's a part of money. And as Bitcoiners, like, we have a responsibility to shepherd Bitcoin into maturity. And it's not on any one of us. And but it's not on none of us.
I love that. Proof of work is a lifestyle, as I always like to say. And then, okay, last question, because I know you got to make your rounds, and it is a little speculation, Steven, but is this next halving cycle, after the halving, are we seeing a perfect storm for a mega bull run and some God candles in our future?
So, few things. So, if we have ETF approval around the halving, I think I might get this wrong, so forgive me, but I think it's like $40 million of sell pressure a day gets taken off the market around the halving at current prices. You have that come up with the spot ETFs come online. Yeah, I think that's great for Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin can have a tremendous bull run. I think the price can appreciate quickly. I'm pretty fucking bullish on 2024. I'm bullish on 2025. But let me throw you a curveball. God candles, and as that term, like, this is like a really big candle. This is like Bitcoin going to the six figures relatively instantaneously. I don't think that's a good thing. I think we should pray that Bitcoin does not appreciate rapidly. Because what happens when that happens? If Bitcoin truly has this parabolic, near instantaneous appreciation, extraordinarily destabilizing for society, most of the world doesn't own Bitcoin. And yes, Bitcoin will benefit the world regardless of if you own it. But that's a suboptimal outcome relative to this cyclical, gradual price of adoption that gives people time to learn Bitcoin, to understand it, to acquire Bitcoin. Let's say we woke up tomorrow and Bitcoin's at $1 million USD. And it's not because, like, the government printed $500 trillion. It's just like perceptions of its value changed. Everyone rushes to get Bitcoin. Everyone's like, it's a mad rush to convert your wealth from fiat assets into Bitcoin. So people do it. They convert huge amounts of their wealth. Do they know how to self-custody? Do they know how to self-custody well? Are people going to break into their house and rob them? Are they going to have absolutely no idea? Are they going to buy Bitcoin from a scammer because they have absolutely no clue how to do it? All of those things would happen. Gradual education, adoption, and giving the time for anybody to stack some sats prior to these really high price points, I think it's a much better outcome. So I'm very bullish on 2024. I do think we see six-figure Bitcoin. I'm bullish on 2025. But I hope we don't have God candles.
Okay. Well, as Corey Clipston wrote, it's the race to avoid the war, right? So slow, steady climb is probably better for the average person than
I walk and don't run.
Okay. Well, I think on that note, we can end this. Steven, thank you very much.
Pleasure,
Always
brother.
A pleasure. And one of my favorite thinkers recently, because you're able to get philosophical, but bring it down to the average person so someone like me can understand what's going on in the world. So really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And excited to see what more you guys got.
You're against Bitcoin. You're against freedom.